Imagine a man whose prophetic power was so extraordinary that even after his death, his presence brought life to another. How would this be possible? The prophet Elisha, Elijah's successor, lived a journey so intense and full of miracles that his story continues to challenge and inspire us. In this video, we delve into the life of Elisha, highlighting one of the most surprising moments in the Bible, when his corpse, in a miraculous act, brought a man back to life. Prepare yourself for a narrative that transcends time, revealing God's awesomeness even in the most unlikely moments. Elisha appears for the first time in the Bible as a simple farmer, busy with the arduous task of plowing the land. When the prophet Elijah finds him, he places his prophetic mantle over him, 1 Kings 19:21, a symbolic gesture that indicated the succession and passage of the divine calling. From that moment on, Elisha leaves everything behind, his family, his possessions, and his land, to follow Elijah. He doesn't hesitate. That act of faith marks the beginning of an extraordinary journey in which Elisha would become a witness to a God who transforms, restores, and brings hope. Elisha accompanied Elijah until the final moment of the prophet's ministry. When Elijah was caught up to heaven in a chariot of fire, Elisha cried out with great fervor to receive a double portion of Elijah's spirit, 2 Kings 2:9-14. His prayer was answered, and he became one of the greatest prophets in the history of Israel. His life was marked by a series of miracles, from the purification of the waters in Jericho, 2 Kings 2:19-22, to the multiplication of oil for a widow in financial difficulty, 2 Kings 4:1-7. But perhaps one of the most intriguing moments in his story was the miracle that occurred after his death. Once, the Israeli army faced a threat from the Moabites. During a sudden attack, a group of Israeli soldiers had to quickly dispose of a body, probably that of a comrade who had died in battle. Without time to perform the proper funeral rites, they threw the corpse into Elisha's tomb. Something extraordinary happened. Upon touching the prophet's bones, the dead man revived, 2 Kings 13:20-21. This astonishing event echoes as a testimony to the power of God, which surpasses even the barriers of death. As we reflect on this miracle, it is impossible not to consider the profound symbolism of the scene. Elisha's bones, even dry, were a testimony to the abundant life and power of God. This reminds us of the words of the prophet Ezekiel, who saw a valley of dry bones being restored to life by the Spirit of God, Ezekiel 37:1-14. The same power that was present in Elisha is still at work today, bringing life and restoration to the driest and most desperate areas of our lives. Before we continue, I want to invite you to be part of this journey of faith and learning. Subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share with someone you know needs a message of hope. Together, we can spread the impact of these transformative stories. The miracle of a man's resurrection through Elisha's bones was not the only remarkable event in his life. He lived in difficult times where idolatry and corruption often ruled Israel. Even so, Elisha remained faithful to his calling, being a channel of miracles and divine teachings. One of the best-known passages in his career is his encounter with a Shunammite woman, a story full of humanity, faith, and divine intervention. The Shunammite was a generous and wealthy woman who offered Elisha hospitality whenever he passed through her city. Recognizing her kindness, the prophet promised that God would grant her heart's greatest desire, to have a son, something that seemed impossible, as her husband was already elderly, 2 Kings 4:8-17. According to Elisha's word, she conceived and gave birth to a boy. However, years later, tragedy struck the family. The boy died suddenly, and the woman's heart was filled with grief. Despite this, his faith remained unshakable. She did not accept fate as irreversible and sought out Elisha, believing that the prophet had the power to intercede for her son, 2 Kings 4:18-30. What followed was one of the most touching episodes in the Bible. Elisha went to where the boy was, closed himself in the room, and prayed fervently. He lay down on the boy's body, a symbolic action that represented his identification with the suffering of that family. Gradually, the boy began to react, first by warming himself, then by sneezing 7 times, until he finally came back to life. 2 Kings 4:31-37. This story teaches us about the power of persistent prayer and unwavering faith. She also reminds us that even in the darkest situations, God can bring new life. Just as Elisha was an instrument of resurrection, we can also be used to bring hope and healing to those around us. Elisha's trajectory not only highlights the greatness of God, but also shows his concern for people's daily lives. With each miracle performed, we see divine care not only for kings and great leaders, but also for the marginalized and afflicted. This characteristic of Elisha's ministry is visible in one of the most emblematic stories, the purification of poisoned soup. During a period of famine, Elisha's disciples tried to prepare soup with what they found in the region, but ended up using poisonous plants. Upon realizing the danger, Elisha, with the authority given by God, threw flour into the pan, and the food was purified. 2 Kings 4:38-41. This miracle may seem simple, but it reveals how God takes care of the details of everyday life, showing that no need is too small for his love. Furthermore, Elisha performed another impressive miracle by multiplying loaves of bread to feed 100 men. With only 20 barley loaves, the prophet declared that there would be enough food and there would still be leftovers. And so it happened, demonstrating that God is able to supply abundantly. 2 Kings 4:42-44. These acts of Elisha point to a God who not only meets physical needs, but also teaches deep spiritual lessons. He is the God of provision, capable of multiplying what we have when we put it in his hands. These stories inspire us to trust God even when our resources seem insufficient. He continues to act in surprising ways, multiplying what seems small and making it more than enough. Before we move on, I want to remind you of the importance of spreading this message. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share with someone who needs to know that God is a faithful provider. Every action you take helps bring hope to more people. Another fascinating aspect of Elisha's story is his role as an advisor to kings and nations. During a military campaign against Moab, 3 kings found themselves in a desperate situation. They and their armies were without water in the desert. They consulted Elisha, who initially showed resistance due to the idolatry of one of the kings, but ended up interceding due to the presence of Jehoshaphat, a God-fearing king. Elisha then announced a surprising word. Without rain or wind, God would fill the valley with water. The next day, the miracle happened. The armies were able to quench their thirst, and the enemies, deceived by the appearance of the water reflecting the sun, thought it was blood and fell into a trap. 2 Kings 3:4-24. This supernatural victory reminds us that God is the Lord of battles and that his power transcends human logic. However, not everyone accepted the prophet's words with faith. In another episode, during a siege of Samaria, Elisha announced that God would provide abundant food within 24 hours. An official of the king doubted and mocked the prophecy. Elisha then declared that the man would see the miracle, but would not participate in it. And so it happened. The people found provisions in the abandoned enemy camp, but the officer was run over at the entrance to the city while trying to stop the crowd. 2 Kings 7:1-20. These stories teach us the importance of trusting God's promises, even when everything seems impossible. How many times do we limit our faith, like that officer, and miss the chance to experience the supernatural? While you reflect on this, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment about how this message has touched you. Like and share with someone who needs encouragement today. Let's spread this word of faith. Elisha's ministry is a powerful reminder that God works through his servants to transform lives. He did not seek personal glory. His life was entirely dedicated to pointing to the power and sovereignty of God. Even after his death, as we saw at the beginning of this video, Elisha's bones were an instrument of resurrection, a symbol of the eternal impact of a life lived in obedience and faith. 2 Kings 13:20-21. This legacy challenges us to reflect on the way we live. Are we seeking to be channels of God's grace? Are we allowing our lives to be used to positively impact the world around us? Elisha shows us that a life given to God can bear fruit that goes far beyond our time here on earth. And, like Elisha, we are called to trust in the God who multiplies resources, who restores life, and who brings victory even in the most difficult battles. May this story inspire you to seek deeper faith, to live with purpose, and to trust that God is at work, even when we can't see it. Before we close, I want to leave you with a few more questions for reflection. What legacy do you want to leave? How can your faith be strengthened by the examples in the Bible? And of course, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this powerful message with someone you love. May Elisha's story continue to inspire and transform lives.